Welcome to this webinar. We are really happy that you tuned in, and we've got a great program for you this afternoon. My name is Ellen Heap. I'm board member of the Dutch Electric Vehicle Drivers Association, and in this role, very committed to this subject because that's what we want. We want flawless charging all around Europe. I can write a novel about all the experiences I had in my electric vehicle, from looking for charging stations that weren't up, that I couldn't find, closed charging stations, that what I thought when I came in, I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to charge, but they were closed. I remember even a fierce competition with a Jaguar I-Pace. I was driving in the Hyundai because I wanted to be first at the first available charging point somewhere at the Route du Soleil on our way to Lyon. And I also remember all my experience on that I spent hours and hours on a completely empty parking spot where finding drugs was easier than finding the charging station. And I'm sure you are EV drivers, you've got similar experiences like I do. So EV roaming is one of the major topics for our Dutch Electric Vehicle Drivers Association. And I know, because we're committed to a big European network, I know that all EV drivers organizations are having the same wish. Flawless border charging is incredibly important. And that's what we're talking about today. So let's have a look at the program, what we're going to show you this afternoon. Very interesting results from a 2-year project, EVRoaming for EU. Partners from 4 different countries, Denmark, Austria, Germany, the Netherlands. We're focusing on regional and transnational pilots to solve obstacles for cross-border charging. We have discovered obstacles, we've discovered opportunities, and know more about what is needed for the future now. So we will present our new agenda for the future today. And we've got a spoiler alert. You can join this movement. We will also give you a bigger picture. If you compare what is happening now in our branch, in our business, to other fields like the telecom business, the internet, what can we conclude from that? What does it say about the roadmap we have to take? And we will also kick off a brand new global organization on EV. Big partners have already joined. We have an impressive agenda for the future, and we will let you know how you can be part of this movement. If you've got questions, please do so by giving a remark on the right side of your streaming in the chat box. We've got our moderator, Dave, who will see that your comments or questions to the speaker will get through to me. And so we can focus on your question in this webinar. Okay, we will start our first topic today, the results of a 2-year project here in Europe. Pieter Looijenstein. He's project manager at Emera Electric. He will give you some insights and lessons learned in the 2-year project. Welcome, Peter. You were one of the partners in this project. Just for, I don't know if everyone knows, but what does MRA stand for?
Good afternoon, Ellen. So let's just forget about the acronym, because that will be a tongue-tire. We are a regional government specifically founded for stimulating electromobility, and we operate in the region around Amsterdam.
Oh, that's perfect. You've worked hard in this pilot, and you're going to tell us all about this project and the lessons learned. I would say the floor is yours, Peter.
Thank you, Ellen. So, good afternoon, everybody. So first of all, I think I would like to say that it's an honor to be have been part of this project. We've had it's been a pleasure working on this project the past few years, and I should also stress that while I've been allowed to share the results, I've only played a small part in it. So, but I'll tell you more about the full partnership later on. So we are a regional government, and some of you might think, why are you involved in protocols? So we think that to stimulate electromobility, it's crucial to have a dense network of charging stations. And as many of you will probably know, there's more to it than meets the eye. There's a lot of things going on the background when you see a charging station on the street. And we think that by stimulating electromobility, we can achieve cleaner air and prevent climate change. And you need some steps to get there, but in the end, these protocols should achieve that. So that's a bit high level, so let's make it more tangible. We think that implementing open protocols such as OCPI can improve the information for EV drivers. And those not only information, also the reliability and the ease of the whole experience. As you see here on the sheet, relevant information would be where to charge, what you're going to pay, and also how long your charging time is expected to be. So it's not just for the EV drivers that we're doing this, and clearly both government and the markets are doing this for the EV driver. If you look at government, it's also important to create a transparent, open marketplace, and protocols such as OCPI can help that. For the market, the advantages and the added value are to a large extent comparable. And I think it's also important to stress that OCPI can give you an efficient implementation. So let's have a broader view at the different EV market protocols. So as you can see here, it's quite a large ecosystem with a lot of functions that have to be connected, a lot of actors communicating. And if you want to have a seamless experience and want to optimize all societal benefits in the system, all these different actors and parts need to communicate with each other. As you can see, there are already a lot of standards under development and also applied. And today we're talking specifically about this part of the ecosystem, so the OCPI part. This is the connection between the CPO and the MSP, but it can be equally well used for connecting CPOs and hubs. And in the future, there will also be more applications possible. Our solution for getting roaming in Europe off the ground and providing transparent information about charging stations is the OCPI protocol. And we've been working on that the past 2 years in this project. So please allow me to tell you a little bit more about the project. I think it's important to mention that it's been funded by Electromobility Europe. So thanks Electromobility Europe for making this possible. It has been initiated and coordinated by the Netherlands Knowledge Platform for Public Charging Infrastructure, short NKL. And we've had partners from 4 countries, just mentioned by Ellen. I think it's important to point out here that, of course, OCPI is open way beyond that. So it's open to any partner in any country. And the restrictions here came from the funding program. What else? So it's not just about protocol development. We've also been preparing a management organization, which Roland will tell more about later on. And we've been doing demonstrations. These are the partners, 8 partners in the project, a nice mixture of businesses, governments, and knowledge institutes to get the best out of it. So on to the results, results of the development. So we've been able to develop a 2.2 version of the protocol. It's finalized and has been implemented already at some organizations. And this 2.2 version gave some major improvements, such as real-time transaction information for EV drivers. The use for hubs has been enabled, and also the meter values are now signed, which are in certain countries are specifically important. So the 3.0 version, there's a first draft of it, a first setup, but it won't be finalized within this project. But of course, as you all know, OCPI is continuing. A little bit more about the regional pilots. In Netherlands, we've been connecting Total as a CPO and Greenfix as a CPO with EVBox. In Denmark, EON, Clever, and Verta were connected, and in Austria, INEO and has to be were connected through the OCPI protocol. And that's the regional pilots, and we went beyond that, and after that we started with the transnational pilots. So we've also been connecting across the borders. So after connecting within the Netherlands, we've also connected with Plugstart in Germany, and Stroomnetz Hamburg has connected with INEO Austria, and EON Denmark have connected with Enel based in Italy. So what have we learned? Well, there's a lot we have learned, so I'm going to pick out a few. I think it's important to stress that the implementation went quite well, and the different programmers were happy with the implementations. And of course, there were some drawbacks, and didn't always go very smooth. But in the end, the system has been shown to be stable and also provide a high quality of information. Other important advantages are the low operating costs. So OCPI allows you, of course, to connect with multiple MSPs through the same protocol, and this should lower your operating costs. So, and we've now finalized the project, but of course we want more. We're not there yet. There's a long list of wishes. And one of the things on that list is the ISO 15118 integration, which should allow us to integrate plug and charge, but also field to grid and state of charge in OCPI. And the connection with national access points is also one of the things on our list. So there's a lot that we want, but let's look at a little bit at the shorter term. So what's next? Today we'll be launching the EVRoaming Foundation. There's a need for an IPR policy and improved and more mature management of the protocol. To support future implementation and therefore the growth of OCPI across the globe, we want to provide additional tooling to make it easier to implement this protocol. So that's about our results. I think the team has done a very good job, and so I'm open for questions. And if you're not, I'm happy to give the floor back to Ellen.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for your insights. I can see, we've got this chat box and you can ask questions. Please do so. I can see some of our friends that were also busy in the pilot. So it's nice to have all our guests from Austria and Denmark and Germany and all other guests. So welcome. One of the questions I've got for your situation in Amsterdam, what did you learn from this, from MRA Electric? What did you learn from this, this project?
Well, I must say that we are in doubt a long time whether or not starting in a project with protocols is close enough to our normal work. But I'm very happy that we did, because we've been able to get these implementations, these first important implementations off the ground in the region. And I think in these kinds of situations, government can play a crucial role to get these to support these first implementations. And I was happy to see that many of the businesses that we have to rely on for this happily implemented OCPI. So we got a lot of enthusiastic responses about that, and I'm also seeing that the companies with which we cooperated are now getting more and more implementations done. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I've got the questions, and I know it's from my colleague, EV Drivers Association in Austria, Christian. He says, do you see a Europe-wide adaptation of OCPI?
Well, if I look at the rate at which OCPI is growing now and the amount of implementations, I'm quite optimistic, and I think that if we continue to improve the protocol and the market share keeps improving, then it's yeah, very well possible. Yes.
And that's what we're working on. And I mean, is there in some parts of Europe, will it be easier than in other parts of Europe? Do you think we should have some EU politics working on that as well?
I think it would be quite hard in this phase for the European government to prescribe this protocol, but that, of course, that's not my not my work, so to say, or my responsibility. But if you look at our region, we've been prescribing OCPI as the protocol to use for any CPO that wants to operate our charging stations for some years now. So effectively, in the Netherlands, it's already the standard. So that doesn't have to come just from either national or European governments. You can also decide as a local or regional government to prescribe this protocol.
And a global phase, because I know that in California they've already set it as the standard. So there's more and more interest from different parties, I think.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see that. And of course, this has started in Europe, but it has always been intended to be an open protocol and therefore also a global protocol.
Okay, I've got another question from Arne Richters. I'm just reading it from my mobile. What makes OCPI unique versus the other protocols you mentioned on your slides? Like OICP state, they're also open. What's your view on that?
All right. So for us as a government, we have to, of course, to choose the protocols which are closer to us and provide the effect that we're aiming for. And OICP and other protocols might be interesting, but they differ in terms of how broadly have been accepted, what purposes they serve, and also, as I said, how close they are to our work. So we prescribe different protocols. We also prescribe OCPP, and perhaps we might also be prescribing protocols such as ISO 15118, but we would first need to study this more and to see where it is going, which purposes it serves.
Okay, and I know that one of the speakers we're going to have, Rudy Beckers, he will also elaborate a bit on those protocols. I've got a question can you clarify the added value of EVRoaming for EU over and above simply using OCPI? Is there I know that, for example, working together in all sorts of different, with all sorts of different organizations, with technicians, with business people, that is also one of the advantages of your EVRoaming project. But what sort of other things are there besides OCPI?
Well, first of all, I think that being part of a dedicated team helps speed up the implementation of OCPI. And as I previously also mentioned, it's not just about implementing OCPI. It's also been about developing OCPI and the OCPI management organization. So there's much more to it. I think it's also important to point out that we've not done a pilot. It started as a pilot, but these are now live connections, daily used. They're common practice now, and so it's not just that we done a project and that we're moving on. These are live connections right now.
One of the questions of Anders Roedlang. There are several initiatives coming up, like Charge Up for Europe. That's like a sort of a lobby organization, I think, from EVBox and Allego and the third part I've forgotten. How do you cooperate with those other initiatives?
Well, Ellen, I think that this is a question in which Roland can answer very well.
Okay, Anders, so we have to wait, but we will keep on this. We will remember this question and ask it later to Roland. Okay, I think we've got all the questions. I would like to thank you so much, Peter. I know that we have had different pilots, and we've just made a little filmic impression of what the pilots look like, what this project looked like. So Have a look with us. It's a short video just to get an impression on how all those companies work together in this project.
EVRoaming for You is a European project with 4 project partners from Denmark, Germany, Austria and from the Netherlands.
It's charging! It's charging! It's charging! Come here!
Yes, and a big thank you for all these project partners. And this is sort of, we would like to see this as a sort of the official end of this project, but also the start of a new beginning. I would like to present to you our next speaker, Roland Verweda. Most of you know him. He's managing director of NKL, the Dutch knowledge platform for public charging. Roland, we already got a question for you, but you were managing this project for the last 2 years. It's finished now, and we have some interesting results, lessons learned. But if you look at it at a broader perspective, what sort of topics do you see appear on the horizon? And maybe if you start your presentation, you can also tell something about how you work together with those other European initiatives like Charge Up Europe. Thank you, Roland.
Yes, I am focusing
Roland, Roland, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Your sound is not working right, so maybe you can do something with your laptop. Can you try and talk again? No. No. Maybe you can. No. I'm sorry. Is there something what you can do with the voice of the noise in your computer? The sound? Can you try again?
Yes.
No. No. Yeah. Try it again without the ears. No. Sorry. It's so interesting what he has to tell you. I'm sorry for you guys, but this is also always the same thing at a webinar. We also always have to take into account that voice or image is not working correctly. We're giving Roland some time now to see if he can fix the problem. And there he is again. No, it's not working again, Roland. And we had such a good practice, huh? Can you do the same? We had a really good practice before we went on this webinar. So I'm trying to sort of fill out these moments for you. And what we might be able to do is put on the movie again so that you can have another look at what we just saw. And then we can give Roland some time to repair his sound. Would you mind doing that for me, Jelle?
EVRoaming for You is a European project with 4 project partners from Denmark, Germany, Austria and from the Netherlands.
It's charging. It's charging. It's charging. Come here.
Yes, there we are. I'm sorry for this double movie, but I think it's an extra gratitude to all the project partners. I
Hi,
was
Emily.
just wondering. Yes, Roland, are you
Hi.
there? How's your
Hi.
sound now?
I don't know. You tell me.
I think it's great now. So please,
Oh,
the
perfect.
floor is yours, and let's continue our webinar.
Yes, I will. Let me share my screen with you because I've been messing about a bit. But I will do it. So let's cut this part of the presentation from the recording afterwards.
Yes, we will. We will cut it.
And let me take you. And let me take you along with the presentation. Do you see what I have to show you?
Yes. It's good. Go ahead, Roland.
Oh, okay, perfect. So let me start again. I'm just very proud to be part of this whole webinar and to have organized this from NKL perspective. I would like to thank the Electromobility Europe Institute who co-funded this. Very grateful for that. And since we've now come to the end of the project, I think Peter already mentioned we're doing a lot of things. It is time that we start to understand what did we learn from it. We worked on development of the OCPI protocol. We organized pilots, transnational, we tested them. We've got a strong academic track, which Rudy Beckers will tell about. And we're also preparing a management organization. So first of all, what really stood out is that user centricity is something we need to keep focusing about. You know, years ago, we started this from a rather technical perspective, but meanwhile, the market is maturing. User centricity is key. It is also key for roaming protocols that support the whole information flow, transaction flow, and to make roaming possible for EV drivers. We also noticed that growth is a very key element, not only in terms of volume, but also in terms of new actors, new roles, but also new business models. So it's very difficult to, let's say, rely on one technical element today and see it still there in 5 years. That's why we're working on loosely coupled initiatives, technical elements, and I think an open roaming protocol is a very excellent fit for that. Third of all, the market is maturing rapidly. So we need to stay alert and be ready to embrace innovative services, new business models around smart charging, around V2G, around information services for these EV drivers. So I think with this sheet, I also answered one question that basically stated, okay, I've implemented OCPI. What does this EV roaming thing mean for me? I think it's the difference between implementing a protocol and work together and further develop this whole EV roaming, this whole EV sector. Let me move then on to the second sheet that I have, because it requires collaboration. This collaboration that we've, let's say, organized for the past years in this project, which started even before that, is about improving these mobility services. It's about supporting new development in the market. So it's about supporting you as businesses, as CPOs, as MSPs, also in supporting your growth and innovation. But it's also meant to make life simple. So connecting to a new market player should be simple, should be efficient, should be structured, and should have the quality required. So I think beyond just implementing a protocol and make it happen with the quality and innovation and future-proofness that you appreciate, I think that's where a management organization needs to step in. And maybe one last statement. it does not matter whether you want to connect peer-to-peer, whether you want to use hubs, whether you want to, I mean, these whole ecosystems, it's so rapidly developing. I think the essential part here is that we have an open protocol which can support all of this, which is, let's say, agnostic towards one specific market model. So hope this clarifies the learnings that we found so far and the themes that we think should be put on the table when we look forward to EVRoaming. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Roland, for those 4 important themes. I just want to go back to the question that Anders Rutland asked you, like, you know, how do you work together with other European initiatives and groups? Mm-hmm. For example, like Charge Up Europe, how do you work together?
Yeah, so I'm very happy with this development, such as Charge Up Europe. That's a young initiative, but you will see it later today in this webinar. It's an initiative of businesses who commit themselves on open protocols and open development, where the EV driver is centric. So the short answer is yes, we are cooperating. The longer answer would be we need each other from all these perspectives in order to support this growing market.
Okay, and as you already told us, Roland, we will get back to this, Anders. So stay tuned, I would say. Thank you. Before we go to the next step in how to organize this and make this happen, I mean, that you need a lot of practical things. It's important to sort of take a step back and look at the bigger picture, because how should we reflect on the things that are happening in our business, and what can we learn from other fields like the internet business or the telecom business? That's where I like to present our new speaker, our next speaker. His name is Rudy Beckers. He's a full professor at the Eindhoven University of Technology, and he also holds the chair of standardization and intellectual property at the same university. Welcome, Rudy. We're very pleased that you will give us some more insight in this bigger picture, being a good professor. If you compare what is happening in our business to other fields, what can you say about it?
Well, thank you, Alan. First of all, it's nice to be here and welcome everybody. So within the project, we had this academic track, actually looking into what I was talking about. What can we learn from other fields? Because standardization has been around for more than 100 years, and it goes along with a significant number of challenges. It's not necessarily easy to put good technology actually into wide usage and what we call interoperability. And so in this project, we try to put considerable energy in taking this step back and also make a critical reflection. Where are we standing, all these protocols developing, and how will that bring us to the future? So let me share a little bit about what we did on this academic. I'm going to talk a little bit about the different pieces of research that we formed as part of this project. I would like to talk with you a little bit about the future scenarios to interoperability, particularly looking at the different types of protocols that we see right now. And I would like finally to talk about EVRoaming and so-called open standards. Everybody talks about open standard. Everybody says his or her standard is open, but what does it really mean in context? First, about the academic track within the project. So basically we did a number of different studies, and we prepared 3 documents, 3 reports, and they should be available, as I think, as of the end of this week or early next week, publicly available. There's a lot of details there. I cannot go through it all right now, but I do welcome you go and take a look at them, because you might find interesting information there. So what we did is actually compare all these different protocols. There are 4 protocols, I'll mention them later, and we did an in-depth comparison of their analysis and the way they're set up, but also of the governance and the organization that created them and how they are further being developed. Secondly, we looked at achieving interoperability, looking at harmonization and how that would lead to the future. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a moment. And we finally looked at what we call design principles for an ideal roaming protocol. And what's an ideal protocol? It will be a protocol that takes all the stakeholders into consideration, that will be able to deal with the several trends and challenges that are about, but that would also fit in a regulatory environment and would bring us to seamless roaming. So to do all this work, we did considerable literature work, we did interviews with about 38 different roaming experts, we visited events, and we brought all this information together. So what I'm telling you about today is actually what we learned from all these experts and their opinions. So now, first about these seamless scenarios or these future scenarios to interoperability. Because what we'll want at the end is what we would call seamless roaming. And seamless roaming would be the situation in which a driver, a user, can charge at any public charging station, regardless of which CPO would operate that station and regardless of which mobility provider that user has selected for the services. It would work anywhere. But many stakeholders we saw were struggling with a multitude of different standards and protocols around, with the uncertainty around that. And so from there, we derived 6 different scenarios from the literature and from our extensive talks with all these people. And we discussed them with them and we tried to see their opinions on that. So let's quickly look at the baseline. We're talking about an EV user, as you see in this picture here, charging the car at the charge point. And this EV user has a relationship with a mobility service provider, provided, for example, payment details. Now, this is a fairly standard situation, baseline. And in a moment, we're going to look what happened if we got other charge points that come into the picture. We're seeing 2 right over here. There might be even charge points coming where the mobility provider is the same party as the charge point operator. There's one here. And there also might be roaming hubs active on the market that connect it all together. So now we got all the different players here, and we're going to look at the different protocols that they're using. So, as for the first scenario is the status quo, is the current situation, in which many different protocols are being used between all these parties, and I'm sure you know many of their names already. Advantage, there's competition between the protocols, and there's a lot of fast development. But there's a lot of degree of fragmentation here. There's very significant cost for implementing, adopting, sometimes implementing 2 or 3 different standards. There might not be seamless roaming. People might not be able to use their protocol everywhere. And it's an uncertain situation and defined by many people as messy. Now let's move on to the second scenario. That will be the harmonization of the existing protocols. Protocols basically move together in the same direction and merging. Such a single standard would be advantageous, would have lower implementation costs, but it might be a very difficult process to get there. With a lot of coordination cost involved, it might be slower in responding to future needs, and innovative efforts might become a little bit slower because of this merging process. Now, the third scenario will be what we call in the literature a standards battle, a fight in the market over which is the most successful protocols, the winning protocol widely adopted, and all the other protocols going out of use. Such a standard battle, and we've seen quite a few of them actually in different markets, would lead to full interoperability, everybody using the same standard. But then again, the outcome that might be the winning protocol might not be optimal for everybody. For specific use and specific users need, it might fit less well than other protocols. And perhaps this protocol might not support all types of different business models, depending on which one gets selected. A fourth scenario is almost there. It's a scenario in which gateways with protocols. We still have different protocols on the market, but parties will implement multiple protocols and translate from one protocol to the other, which would reduce the risk for monopolies in the market and would be easier if we got different contexts with different types of user needs, because we still have different protocols that are optimum to different sets of user needs. Of course, this goes also at some cost. Gateway always buys some cost in terms of implementation of those protocols, cost in terms of reduced functionality. You can only support those functionalities that both protocols have in common. And complications, when these protocols also get updated at the same time, having these gateways can become very complex. Now, a next scenario will be a complete kit on the block. There will be a new, for example, European standard coming up, or even a worldwide standard, like the IEC protocol, which is currently being developed, and that one becoming dominant. In that case, we would have a fully open standard. We would have full interoperability if it would replace all the existing standards, and it would take into account the stakes of the stakeholders worldwide. But also disadvantages in this area. It might be costly for many people to participate in a worldwide standard development, sending people there, doing meaningful contributions there. There might be the risk of domination of a certain world region. Not every world region is the same, and the needs in Europe, for example, could be rather different than the needs in, say, China or the US. So we'd have to wait what we end up with. And some people would also argue that we would have a slower development of technology that way. And then I know one, I'm not sure if the scenario for roaming would be there's no roaming at all, but just ad hoc payment. People would pay in the regular way like they would pay now with a gasoline car, which would be, of course, closer to the experience with ICE vehicles. And there would be no roaming costs or fees involved for end users. But then again, an electric car is not a gasoline car. There's probably going to be more need for integration of services and other types of functionalities. And this type of situation without roaming would not fit trends like mobility as a service or people leasing a car from the company, etc. And also, EV charging is very different from gasoline stations. With gasoline station, might get away with a few thousand gasoline stations in a country. With EV charging, we might need hundreds of thousands, even eventually million charging points. And operational costs and expenditure and investment could be prohibitive if you have to supply all these stations with the necessary means for local payment. Then again, we have to realize all the parties we talk with in this exercise that we are actually EV roaming, so their opinions might be a little bit biased towards that, obviously, as well. Now, I talked to you about 6 different scenarios. Which of these scenarios is most likely to occur? Well, opinions pretty much differed on that. And as you see here, the current situation is not likely to go on for a very long time, according to the people that we talk to. Harmonization of the existing protocols is happening already in a limited way right now, but it's probably not a big way forward as people believe. A standards battle is what a lot of people expect to be happening, the most likely scenario. There's going to be a winner here. The gateway scenario, translation scenario, not so many people be mentioning that we talk to, but actually we see it's already happening. Increasingly we see, for example, roaming hubs implementing multiple protocols and doing that translation. So it's something happening on the market right now. And about the new global protocol, IEC protocol, the views very much differ, but expectations are not very high to replace. Okay, finally, I would like to move to the final topic of my presentation, EV roaming and standards. And you probably have noticed that everybody is talking about open protocols. Have all the protocols we looked at least 3 or 4 of them even got the word open in their name. And a real open standard is going to be very important, especially in the future, to be able to balance the needs and the interests of all the different stakeholders, but also for government acceptance, where it's extremely important for governments, for example, in procurement, but in many other ways, that governments want to rely on standards that are real open standards and not proprietary type of protocols. But then, of course, the question surfaces, what is really an open standard? A lot of people are using different definitions. But if we look at regulators and people that work in the field of academics, there's one definition of open standards which is increasingly adopted by everybody. And it's the definition that comes from the World Trade Organization, from the Technical Barriers to Trade Committee, who developed a number of criteria for open standards. And let's take a quick look. What is an open standard according to them? They associate open standards with the following 6 criteria. The first of them is transparency, which means that the standard, but also the draft version of the standard of the protocol, must be available to everybody in time so people can make meaningful contributions. Openness is a criterion, and openness here means that people, any party that has an interest, has an ability to participate in that process at every different stage of the process, from the very early drafting and addition of ideas towards the final standard. Impartial, that's not dominated by one particular party or groups of parties with a particular interest. You see also consensus, and in standardization, consensus means that decisions are taken in such a way that in the end there's no opposition anymore on by parties on a sustained issue. So all the parties basically deciding together on a standard. Then there's also effectiveness. A standard should be developed only when implementation is feasible and technically possible. Relevance, which means that it must be able to respond to regulatory and market needs. Coherence, which means in this context that there's no competition between standard bodies trying to generate the standards for the same type of application. And finally, a development dimension, which encourages the participation of developing countries. So there's quite a lot of things to ask basically from it. And so you might be wondering, to what degree do the current standards and protocol for EV roaming satisfy all these criteria? Well, we try to do a very careful analysis of looking at all the standards we have right now. You see them here on the screen, and we tried in the most transparent way to look at how do they actually satisfy these different criteria. And we see that it varies a little bit. Most of them are doing fairly well on transparency. Some of them are doing a little bit worse on the impartiality and consensus part. None of the standard is really currently a full open standard. The regulators define it. But from our analysis, it does show that the OCPI standard is the one that is currently closest. And including some of the changes that are being announced for now, I think it's fairly clear that this standard is the most satisfying the criteria of open standards. And I don't have time to go in all the level of details of this table right now, but please do read the documents. Then we actually explain how we weight this and how we look at all these different aspects when we try to assess openness. So coming to the end of my presentation, what we see is a vibrant development of the different roaming protocols. We all are looking for a future pathway to harmonization, but we're not exactly sure yet how that's going to do and who will be the eventual winner in that process. And after this period of early development, where I think it was also kind of necessary and useful to have all these different developments competing with each other, it is now increasingly important that the future standard with adhere with open standards criteria to gain support from government and also stakeholders in a wider sense. And I hope that gave you a little bit of insights into what we did in the academic track of the EV Roaming for EU project. Thank you very much. The floor is back to Ellen.
Thank you, Rudy. That was a nice presentation. I had to keep my brains working to follow it, but I think it was very interesting. We've got a question from Simon Ruiters. Do you have any idea how many countries obligate the use of protocols, EV roaming, with all national or European publicity accessible charging points? And do you support such an approach?
Yes, so Simon, thank you for that question, because that's a very interesting part. And then we actually have to look at least if we look at Europe, what is Europe's general strategy when Europe, the so-called new approach, which basically means, in short, that Europe does not prescribe standards or make them obligatory, but it tries to have standard developed. And if you choose such a standard, then you will automatically be compatible with European law and regulations. And this is probably one of the next steps for EV roaming standard. It is unlikely that European regulators will actually prescribe or make one of the protocols mandatory, but there will be a framework in the future where these open standards are going to be important, which will decide who actually satisfies the expectation from the regulator. I know that's not an easy answer, but I think it's the best answer I can give you right now.
Thank you, Rudy. And I've got a question myself, because how do you see, as a scientist, how do you see sort of the balance between a solid standardization, what we need, and working on innovation as well? Because those two things maybe seem a little bit contradictory to me. How do you see that? How can you get those two things together?
Yeah, I think I can see why you seem to see this contradiction. Standardization is also about agreeing on something and then freezing it and not changing it anymore over time. So it feels a little bit like a step back. But then again, if we look at successful standardization and just look at mobile telecommunication, but also look at the internet, innovation is thriving. It does not exclude each other. A good innovation process is perfectly compatible with a good standardization process. So the one does not have to go at the expense of the other.
Okay. Hey, and as an EV driver, I'm very impatient. I want to drive tomorrow to the rest of Europe. What sort of time frame are we looking at if you look at those, at what you described? I mean, how long do we have to wait?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. That will be up to the people here, the people in this project, the other people with the other protocols. How fast we'll be able to to move together, to move towards harmonization, in some fields have taken a lot of years. I think we cannot wait a lot of years here and wait of the adoption of EV cars to get so high and people be obstructed by this situation. So I think there will be common sense to move to harmonization earlier than that. But I can't tell you exactly how long that will take here.
Well, let's go and ask Roland then. But thank you so much, Rudy, for your presentation. And stick around, because maybe if there's people still wanting to ask him a question, it's possible. Go to the chat box on the right side of your screen. And then, you know, we might be able to get Rudy back later in the webinar. But for now, thank you so much, Rudy. Can I ask Roland? Roland, I think it's time for the next step, isn't it, Roland? Because we've got our lessons learned from the project. Rudy has given us the bigger picture. You told us about the topics we need to tackle in the future. That demands for new solid organization. Don't you think?
Yes. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I think this is maybe the official moment to launch the organization. Shall we? Well, congratulations, Roland. It's a fact now. You've got a new organization. You've already committed some big organizations behind this foundation. What can you tell us about it?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'm just very, very happy that we've it's been a long road that we're here, and all the work you have seen and you have performed, it finds a new place in this EVRoaming Foundation. So the past few years were intense for the project, but also in the interim OCPI management board that helped us develop this EVRoaming Foundation to the point where we are today. So first of all, I'd like to have say a big thanks to the organizations of EVBox, of Allego, Girève, Freshmile, LYON, but also Plug Serving, partly. They helped us. They helped us to get where we are today. A new EVRoaming Foundation with also a new board. So the first board members that will join this EVRoaming Foundation will be EVBox. It will be Freshmile. It will be LYON. And it will be Last Mile Solutions up next to NKL. So those are the organizations. Those are the 5 organizations that will be the, let's say, the board that will be present at the birth of this new foundation. But we are very much looking forward to a few additional board members, to contributors with whom we will continue this journey as an open community to make EVRoaming happen, big scale.
Yes, those are impressive organizations, and I know that you wanted to have a big community in this foundation, and the new foundation will also help a great variety. It's businesses, CPOs, MSPs, EV drivers, companies in all fields, and they also see this importance of OCPI in a new foundation. Well, in the last two weeks, we have assembled some reactions from different parties all around the globe. So let's have a look at what people think of it.
Driving an EV is really pleasant and simple when you are inside the vehicle, and we need to find exactly the same idea for recharging the vehicle and so on, finding a charging station. All those things need to be very easy, simple and comfortable for the driver.
With the EV driver in mind, that drives from charge point to charge point, crosses borders, and all the difficulties that entail.
And we believe that roaming will be crucial to enabling consumers to be confident by their electric vehicle, to access payments, but also for fleets, which of course is a huge element of the mass vehicle market.
It's very important that that goes seamless, and therefore you need open protocols where everybody can work with.
OCPI in the whole industry is seen as the standard in every continent, and simply because it can deliver on this. It enables communication between MSPs and CPOs to allow EV drivers to charge anywhere, and it can facilitate the provision of transparent information so that consumers have that information about charging locations, about pricing.
For me and for Total, OCPI is an independent protocol, and it is simple and open to all EV market players. So per experience, we know that we can connect a new partner with OCPI in a minimum of time.
To solve all these problems, different protocols, different partners, different knowledge, different modules, different status of implementations. We just need our developers for other things than get all this administration stuff with partners to get them connected to our network.
We don't discuss for hours, okay, how we're going to do that. It's just, okay, we just do the OCPI. It's a simple, obvious way to do it.
It's easy.
And it's scalable, and it has the new features that can easily be plugged in for the whole industry.
The lessons learned about the pilots is there's a big advantage of OCPI because you can connect peer-to-peer between CPO and e-mobility service provider, and also via hub. So you need in future only one protocol.
And we need to help newcomers about this vision of business objects in order to reduce the complexity of implementing OCPI, not on a technical level, because this is already okay, but on a functional and business level.
That the project from the beginning, and I was like deeply impressed about how good the structure of the project is, how motivated all the partners have been and still are.
Now, basically we celebrate that we go to a more professional organization. I like to congratulate all the parties that we achieved this together. I think it's a nice highlight.
To develop together and to go out with that, to have a message, to support it, to have like the same goal working on.
It's has a more professional basis now, so we can refer to that. And every country we go, we bring OCPI, and it's always good that it has a more solid basis, like in the US or Australia or Brazil or Asia. I think it's great that we have that backing of a solid basis.
And why something like the City of New York would be able to really benefit for, from a driver point of view, being able to have that one fob key or that one tap to charge to be able to start all these different charging sessions would be fantastic.
At the end, it is all about creating that convenience for EV drivers. Should be as easy as charging your phone. I mean, really create a convenience and take all barriers away for EV drivers.
Well, so we see that there's a broad consensus about the importance of OCPI and that the need of a solid organizations to take next steps in its future. I have seen some questions, Roland. There's some questions from Moritz and Anders. We will answer them, but first I would like to present Michel. He will explain a bit, about the roadmap, and then we're going to go and talk about how to contribute and if you want to allow national bodies. So Moritz and Anders, stay connected. See you later, Roland. Let's go to Michel. Michel Bayens is a project manager at NKL, and he will tell you more about the current situation and the roadmap of this new foundation for the future. Welcome, Michel.
Thank you, Ellen.
Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, also from my side, an honor to be a part of this important step that we are making today and that we are taking. I want to show you a bit the developments that we did and where we are going towards the next phases and next steps. Briefly going back to where we came from, and in 2010 we started with the first requirements actually from the Dutch Formula E team, a group of municipalities, government bodies, but also market companies who said, well, if we want to stimulate sustainable driving and clean vehicles, then the only way is that you can use them everywhere, so that you can charge everywhere. That means the same connectors and the same systems to use it. So it started in 2010 with that strong requirement. That resulted in the setup of the branch organization in the Netherlands for roaming and interoperability, EVRoaming, in 2012, where the goal was to make it an interoperable system. And they created the world's first roaming hub, the Central Interoperability Register. And it's funny because you see those developments more or less every 2 years. So in 2014, a group from the organization EVRoaming, a group of operators, a group of service providers, they said, well, let's sit together and make it more independent. We do not want to be dependent on one company, on one manufacturer, also not for the development of such a roaming system. And at that moment in 2014, we started with the setup of the OCPI protocol. But meanwhile, and it's important to realize, during those few years, the Dutch Central Interoperability Register already contained over 200,000 charging tokens and charging cards. So we came really from that start to say we must do something. So we started the OCPI protocol, and in 2015 it was the NKL who said, well, we want to make it more mature, supported by all kinds of organizations. It was created bottom up like we used to do in the Netherlands, but we needed to make it more mature, more international, and work together. So in 2015, NKL took over this protocol, and they started to make it a real community. And before we came in 2018, where we installed the first board, the community created a huge amount of people working together from all over the world. And at this moment, there are about 480 persons that are connected to it one way or the other. And now we are here at a great moment of the 28th of May for going to the next step and making it a real global organization where the OCPI protocol is an important part of it, but we can make it much wider and much more interesting thing to maintain it. So if I go then to the situation where we are today with the protocol, then you see that the current version 2.2 from OCPI, got already a huge amount of functions, a huge amount of services that are asked and that are set up by the market. And that's important to realize. It's really a market-driven, community-driven system. So you can use it for roaming with peer-to-peer situations, roaming hubs, all kind of mixed roles. It provides important information for exchanging transaction information, CDRs, but also smart charging support, real-time information about charging stations. I mean, looking, Ellen, what you mentioned in the beginning from the EV driver perspective, you know where you can charge and how you can charge and at what cost. And that's all information that is being shared now already with the current OCPI version. But we are not there yet. I mean, we want to do more and we get more questions. So if we look now at the roadmap that we are for the next 1.5 to 2 years, we go from version 2.2 to version 3.0 with it. And that will include all kinds of services. This is not the total number of services, because it will be created and set up also with the input that we get from the market, which, by the way, this information was also generated by the market. So it was not from us, from the NKL, who thought it, but it is on request of the market. So we will look, and we are already busy with solutions for Utrecht, for the calibration law. Also to look at improved CDRs. We look at V2G support, 15.11.8 support, and we are closely to the market with that we follow the market where they go and what they want, and together with them, we work on it. We look at metering services to give information and right information to DSOs and to energy companies. But we also look at products and spend control support, which means that depending on a bit like fuel cards, like old-fashioned fuel cards, and we look, okay, how can you control a bit the amount of energy that you are allowed to get and under which conditions? And from the other side, and that's where we go up to version 3.0, we look at better security, better way of supporting contracts, but also a lot of attention will be paid to implementation, test tools, and supporting. And finally, and that is the ultimate goal that we have, we realize that for an upscale of the use of this, we need to make it more efficient. And that's where we really look at for version 3.0 to see, okay, how can we really make it an efficient, dynamic protocol together with the community. And it is very well possible that several of the services that you see in this slide, that they belong or that they will be introduced before we have the final version 3.0. But it is the road ahead, and we are looking forward to all the new inputs that we still get. Back to you, I think, Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michel. That looks like an ambitious program. And I'm sure that there are people watching now that want to play a part in this program. I can see, looking at the questions, that people have already browsed a bit on the new website.
Yeah.
I would like to go back to Roland. Roland, I know that you want this foundation to be a broad organization where experts can join to ramp up the innovation. Can you tell us a bit more about joining this initiative? And I know there's some questions, so I first leave you to it, and at the end I will ask you some questions about it. Is that okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Michel, for explaining this great road ahead. I think that's the core of what we want to do with this open roaming protocol. So maybe if you can put the sheet on that I prepared for this, that would help a bit. Because we are an open community, and we have been, let's say, for the past 6 years, based on volunteers, based on initiatives, based on enthusiasm. But I think, as a number of the speakers already said in this movie that you just saw, we need a solid base for the protocol. We need reliability. The regulator requires reliability from these kind of protocols. And if we are to support tens of millions of EVs or more in the future, and we want to assure interoperability, we need this reliability. And we cannot just rely on enthusiasm and personal drive. So this community, we also try to bring this community to the next level. Apart from the developments of the protocol itself, we will support the development sessions, the marketing, but also the face-to-face meetings. We will assure that testing is possible, easy and effective. We'll assure, because roaming is not about the transaction, but it's also about contracts. It's also about the invoice and the bill. So we'll also provide some standards and support on that. So it's the full interoperability package around the protocol that we would like to support with this EVRoaming Foundation. And of course, we will become part of future initiatives and innovations as well. So we already mentioned smart charging, vehicle to grid, ISO 15118, all these kind of developments, but also, let's say, to assure security, information security end-to-end, this all needs development in a reliable and professional manner. And I think that's where we stand today when we announce this professional EVRoaming Foundation. So that's what it all comes down to. Benefiting from a single open protocol. It's regardless of where you are and who you are in this value chain, whether you're a startup, where you're a big player already there, where you are a roaming hub, a data aggregator, a CPO, an MSP. I think if you're involved in roaming, you'd like to have some reliability. It is important to realize that this is a foundation that we've designed here, so it's not profit driven, and we want to assure to each and every one of you that this protocol will always be open and free to use. So if you join, you will need to sign a waiver that you cannot, have any intellectual property that you want to make money from in the future, today or tomorrow. It will be open and free to use. It will also be open in the way we develop services. We try to be as transparent as possible, no hidden cost there. So that is why I think we've given a number of arguments why, well, and you see it in the end in every sector, in every market, why a protocol which develops in a professional and reliable manner needs a solid base. Last sheet from my side, how to join then. We've got a website live. We have identified a number of different types of participation. You might just want to, let's say, listen in. You want to actively contribute and to have an active contribution or have a say in the further development of specific services to support your own business case. But we also have already some sponsors aligned that say, okay, this is something I'd like to support and let grow. If you're interested, then please request the application form through the email that you find on the website. I trust you understand that building a professional organization requires some funding. So developing or also contributing in the way we describe here requires some funding. For the ones that are already on board, we have developed I think a very interesting rebate that will make it very easy to join in the coming periods. More you can find offline and when you request the application form.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Roland. We've still got some 15 minutes left, and I'm just gonna throw some questions to you. The first question was from Moritz, and I think you already sort of answered his question. He said, well, what's the measure for active contribution? What is the measure? Can you say a little bit more about than what you just stated, Ned?
Of course. So the first question that I read, are there plans to make OCPI open source? So I think the answer would be to not make it open source at this stage. It's developed under the, let's say, under the so-called Creative Commons, no derivative regulation. So it is open, it is free to use, but I don't think we will help interoperability if we have 5,000 versions of OCPI. You can, of course, already in a peer-to-peer fashion develop your own extra service to the current OCPI protocol. You can do that today. Nobody withholds you, nobody forbids you to do that. But I think in order to provide full interoperability and the reliability that you can connect with everyone at every time, we need to have some control over the versions of OCPI. The openness you will see is in the shared and in the collaborative development of the services within OCPI.
Okay, and if you go to the second part of his question.
Yeah, the second need, we currently say, so if you want to have a very active contribution, we think 4,000 euros per year is a good measure. It basically means that you will be involved in the core team of active co-development and development of new services that is in the end decided upon by a bigger group. But more, let's say that you can find more information on this one offline. I think this webinar is a bit too short to specify all the details.
Okay.
But trust us if I say that we've looked long and hard into how to make this work.
Yeah. So go and have a look at EVRoaming.org. I've got another question from Anders again. Will you invite national bodies to set up a national access point for each connected country?
That's an interesting question. The national access points is a requirement from the European Commission, the ITS directive. So that requirement is already there for every European country. I think that there has started an additional project on that last year, IDAX, to further support that. And we've been connected with that as well, to help them or to support them in finding one generic way of data exchange, which is, let's say, very much OCPI based. In the end, a national access point is the responsibility of each and every country themselves. But as you said, I think we have some strong suggestions to assure that also the data exchange with every national access point is similar to what OCPI offers. Just an example, if you're one company in one country, but you have services in 5 different countries, and you need to service 5 different national access points, you'd like to share the same type of data, right? Well, that is interoperability that OCPI stands for.
Okay, I've got a new question from Sonila. Are we trying to reinvent the wheel here? Because is there any synergy with the Pan-European e-roaming initiative? I don't know what initiative that is, but maybe you know, Roland?
No, to be honest, I don't know. I know that the term e-roaming is often meant for electricity bills that are swapped between countries. So that's why we were very explicit about EV roaming, to identify really the EV sector and the interoperability that we want to achieve there.
Okay. Well, if you've got some extra,
to learn more.
If you've got some extra information, Sonila, please put it in the chat box. I've got a question from Jorge. I think you pronounce it like this. He says, the OCPI in the USA, the business models are different. How do you see OCPI? How do you see the OCPI used in the US?
So the developments in the US have been different. There were a few players who became very early in time, became very dominant. Still, I think from 2 perspectives, it is interesting to look into OCPI. So first of all, it's the user perspective that basically says, I don't want to know where I'm charging and which charging card or pass or app I need to use. Second, if we talk public space, governments are, you mentioned the state of California, but governments are increasingly looking at interoperability also as a explicit requirement to open up public space. And third of all, I think also the big companies, the CPOs, they understand that if you want to provide services to, say, multi-location companies with different types of charging infrastructure, that it also makes sense for their proposition to have a single approach there, a single interoperable approach. And OCPI can also support that business model.
Okay.
So it's maybe started different than in Europe, but in the end, I think we're heading towards kind of the same way the market works.
And I think Jorge has got another question. What about the OCPI in Latin America, in the South America?
The market is, as far as I know, is a bit younger there. I think they would be, let's say, they would be very wise to take as many lessons learned as possible, because they may be in their own way, they're of course unique. In another way, I think the way we are building EVs, we are building charging infrastructure, we have EV drivers who like to drive across the country and across borders, I think is pretty similar worldwide.
Okay. I've got a question from Christian. Are you also going to talk to car manufacturers, because they also need to be able to talk to OCPI?
Current expectation is that car manufacturers are the stakeholder, of course, in ISO 55118, very, very much so. So OCPI is a bit further up, let's say, in the value chain. So as soon as a car starts charging through a plug-and-charge initiatives, you'd like to be supportive as OCPI for what's happening there. So so the short answer is yes, we are connected to the developments of ISO 15118 and the car manufacturers that are behind that. Because it's a single value chain that needs to be supported.
And if I look at the question of Quinton, what about energy suppliers? Are you talking to them as well?
Yes, we're also talking to them as well. That's the funny thing. So there's so many innovations going on. The question here, the user may want to only contract with his own supplier. So there are so many. In the Netherlands, I know a number of initiatives that basically say, I want to charge at a public charging station, but I want to use the electricity of my own home contract. So it's kind of a disconnect from the charger and the electricity supply. Those innovations are happening. And we definitely are supporting these kind of innovations with the OCPI protocol.
Okay, and if I look, let's have another look to the car manufacturers, to the OEMs. Ben Lane is asking, what about the position of the OEMs towards OCPI? What do you know about it?
Sorry, again, what are the?
What do you know about the position of the OEMs towards OCPI?
Well, if we look at the car manufacturer being a CPO, so we have a number of let's say fast charging companies, also let's say CPOs that are working with or on behalf of car manufacturers. They are supportive of OCPI. As a car themselves, they are not directly involved by this protocol. They have their own ways of connecting to a charging station. We mentioned ISO 15118. There are a few others. But as far as they are part of the charging ecosystem, they are generally supportive of the development that we're working on.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, we also, I have to be honest with you, we also encounter companies or businesses that that see a very open, transparent, free to use protocol as a threat for let's say for a closed system that makes them a certain amount of money. So our call to be open and transparent is not a desirable one for every company. That makes sense, I guess. It makes even more important to support this development.
Okay, and does it require changes in hardware, software, things like that?
It does not require changes in hardware. Changes in software, if you have, it depends a bit on your own back office. And which data you have available for import and export. The interesting part is, of course, with a single protocol that you would only have one interface to connect to every type of player that is around. So it is an interface. The difficulty of the interface depends, amongst others, on your own back office. But if you have set it up, then basically you're done. You can connect to everyone. It's a good investment.
I think that looks so promising, Roland. And as an EV driver, I can't wait to see that. If you look, we've had all the questions, so I think we sort of go to the finish of this webinar. I see one other question coming in. A thank you, a big thank you from Ben Lane. That's his name. Thank you so much. When we are, let's say, 3 years from now, where do you hope that we stand with this EVRoaming Foundation?
Well, we are, of course, fully committed. I think this show, this webinar, thank you very much for hosting this, Ellen. It was great, but I think it shows the full commitment that we have to bring this forward and to assure that there's full interoperability, and that this EV driver will have no hassle. They don't want to look into, which card, which app, oh, I cannot charge, and have this kind of range anxiety. It should all be gone. So we are fully committed to that. Of course, we are not the only ones who can make that happen. Policymakers and regulators, just as Rudy Beckers just said, could help in requiring open interoperable protocols. I think companies could support this in implementing OCPI protocol, but also assuring transparent prices, high quality of information services. So I think these are additional elements that make this EV driver happy, and it will further support the development of new services, and to support this EV growth that we're all aiming for. But I'm very confident that we're heading the right direction.
I can't wait for that to happen, Roland. And I'm sure that all the viewers, that are driving electric vehicles as well. So thank you so much, Roland. And thank you guys all for watching this webinar. I really enjoyed it. I hope you too. You can have another look at this webinar if you want, because we will keep this link, and you can go to the new website, EVRoaming.org, if you want to know more information about what we've just said, what Michel and Roland just have been saying. And we will see that all the presentations also of Peter and Rudy will be on the website soon, so you can have a look at it again. And we hope so much that you join this new global EV foundation, because I think it's important. Well, we hope to see you definitely soon in the near future. By the way, before I forget, we've not only a website, but we've also a special LinkedIn group. And you can join that. I think that's always important for the network, and connect yourselves with all the players feasible in this field. And we've just released a Twitter account, so please feel free to join it there and keep updated about all the news. The only thing I can say to you is it was nice having you here, and I would like to say stay safe, but move on.